Welcome to America's historic steam railroads. Logging railroads during the turn of the century were a vital industry that helped in the development of this great country of ours. These railroads were mostly operated as a narrow gauge railroad, with a few operating on the standard gauge system. Located in the Scenic Mountains of West Virginia, about 90 miles directly east of the capital of Charleston, we find the town of Cass, a reconstruction of a standard gauge logging railroad that operated there for 60 years with its mighty 3-truck Shay locomotives. Our trip today will take us on a 22-mile round trip to the top of a mountain named Bald Knob. We'll be climbing grades as steep as 11% and through 2 switchbacks. We'll visit the locomotive shop, see the original sawmill, and view some fantastic mountain scenery. I'm Bob Shriver, and I hope you enjoy your trip today on America's historic steam railroads.
Some of them will, when they first get on, they're kind of afraid of it. They'll hold their ears, but once you start moving, their eyes will lighten up and they start taking their hands off their ears, and they really enjoy it by the time you get started up the track for a short distance.
Cass Scenic Railroad at this time has 6 Shay locomotives. 3 of which are operational at this time. We have Shay 2, Shay 4, and Shay 5. We also have a Heisler locomotive that's operational at this time. The Western Maryland 6, which is another Shay locomotive, actually it's the last Shay locomotive ever built. It's a 120 class Shay. It's around 162 tons. It's currently on the shop floor. We hope to have it out by next season. We also have a Climax locomotive here at Cass. It is not operational at the time. We are in the process of restoring it. So in the next couple of years, we'll have all 3 types of geared locomotives here at Cass Scenic Railroad: the Shay, the Heisler, and the Climax.
This number 5, it come here brand new in 1905. It's a Class 80 type Shay, and I've run it for about 15 years.
The number 2 Shay is a Pacific Coast Shay. It's the only one of this type to ever operate east of the Mississippi River. The number 2 is usually the lead engine on the Bald Knob train. Every morning you come and you gotta relube the grease cups for the rod bearings. You gotta fill all the reservoirs and the lubricators and lube the gears.
Well, Cass Scenic Railroad is a unique experience. It's a chance to step back in time and look at a way of life or an operation that is long past. This is a unique place. The company town. We have 13 company houses that we've refurbished, and we rent those to the public. Originally, Cass came to be as a lumber town, a lumber company town. There was a mill that operated here. There was a company store, which is still at Cass. At Cass Scenic Railroad, we have basically two runs. We run to a place called Whitaker Station 3 times a day, and we go to Bald Knob once a day. The Whitaker Station trip is a 2-hour round trip. It's 8 miles total, 4 up and 4 back, and as I said, we go there 3 times a day. Bald Knob, we leave once a day for Bald Knob. The train leaves at noon and is back at 4:30, and that's a 22-mile round trip to Bald Knob. We own the town of Cass and a tract of land at Whitaker Station, a tract of land at Bald Knob, and then we have, it's approximately 17 miles of track. So we're a long state park, probably one of the longest.
The building up ahead on the right is the remains of the old sawmill. It was a double band sawmill, and it was capable of cutting 250,000 board feet of lumber per day. The logs were brought into the mill the way a railroad flat cars, dumped into the mill pond, cut, stored to dry, and finally shipped out on the C&O Railroad at the rate of 40 carloads per day. In August of 1978 and February of 1982, most of the mill was destroyed by fire. If you look on the right-hand side, you can see the cast shop. The cast shop was built in 1975 to replace the original shop that was destroyed by fire in 1972. All maintenance work on the engines and cars is done right here at the cast shop.
The hardest part in preserving and keeping Cass Scenic Railroad operational is the maintenance. It's just overwhelming. The upkeep on the locomotives. There's always something that needs to be done, and there's a huge amount of maintenance involved in keeping these things operational. We do things here the same way that they were done years ago. So it's sort of like stepping back in time, and it's a real experience just to walk through the shop when those guys are down there working. The general public doesn't really realize, and at no fault of theirs, what's involved in running an operation like this.
when we go to Whittaker and back, we'll use around 1,500 gallon water and probably a ton of coal.
If you look on the uphill side of the train, you can see another section of track. As soon as we get through the lower switchback, we'll go up on that set of tracks. A brakeman will get off the train and throw the switch. After he does this, we're all set to go up the mountain. A switchback is the railroad's way of going up a steep grade without building a lot of extra track around the mountain. So what we're doing is zigzagging our way to Whittaker Station. The only difference now is we're going to be pulled instead of being pushed up the mountain. Now there are 2 switchbacks on our route today, and if we were to go to the top of the mountain, we could go the entire 11 miles with only 2 switchbacks.
The Whittaker stop is popular with passengers because of its great scenery and picnic tables. While the double headers of Shay locomotives pop off some steam, the cameras are busy. Time to board again to continue our trip to Bald Knob. Our fireman rakes the coals to break up any large cinders so we can keep a good hot fire going. Because the locomotives had been working hard pushing our train up the mountain, we stopped for a short while to take on some more water from an old railroad tank car. The water comes from a natural spring above the rail line and is pumped from the tank by the locomotives into their tenders. The brakeman signals all clear for our trip on up the mountain. Passengers are eager to get off at Bald Knob and get to the observation deck to look at the beautiful mountain scenery. But the shay draws a lot of admirers. These are 3 truck shays with 3 vertical cylinders. The cylinders drive a longitudinal shaft that in turn drive each axle through bevel gears to reduce speed and increase the pulling power. Now that we have reboarded and ready to leave Bald Knob, the deer come out to see if there are any snacks left.
The mountain ridge is visible from the downhill side of part of the Allegheny Mountain Range. The furthest ridge over is the dividing line between West Virginia and Virginia. A log skidder was a big machine with a high column that came out of the top and heavy steel cables that ran on pulleys from the column out into the woods where the loggers were cutting. The loggers would connect the logs to the steel cables and the skidder would drag the log back to the track.
The Scenic Railroad used the old logging cars. That was just the skeleton cars. And of course, there was nothing on there but just the bottoms, and we had to add the floors and the sides and the roof on them.
opportunity to see spectacular collars on the leaves of the hardwoods here at Cass. It's really beautiful.
The loggers around here were called wood hicks. Most of the wood hicks wore plaid shirts and cut their pants legs off just below the knees so they could tuck them into their work boots. Their work boots had thick soles with 1/2 inch spikes coming out of them called quarts. The quart shoes were designed to aid the men up over tree trunks and over piles of logs. They also wore wide-brimmed felt hats. And each day when a logger went out to work, he would cut a notch out of the brim. This was his way of keeping track of how many days back pay he needed to get the first time he got down to Cass. The men who worked on the mountains worked 6 days a week, 11 hours a day for about $1.50 a day. They worked up here anywhere from 6 to 10 months at a stretch. By that time, they were ready for a vacation, which to them meant a trip down to Cass. To get to Cass, they'd hitch a ride on the log trains that headed down to the sawmill. When they got to town, the first place they went was to the payroll office. At the payroll office, each one was given a number, and this number was put on their time card, and a brass badge with the number on it was given to them. The brass badge had a hole in it so that the worker could put it around his neck. This is the way the immigrants were identified and were paid.
As we pass the shops and steaming back-up locomotives, the cameras get another workout. It's time to stop at the water tank for more water before we arrive back at the cast depot.
It's really a special experience for me to see the people standing down here at the depot, and you know, when that train or that locomotive comes up the holler here and the steam's the valves are popping and the smoke's bellowing out of the stack. I mean, people just go crazy. Kids, it makes me feel good to see them having such a good time. I talk to a lot of people every day. And the overall thing that I get, especially from the older people that visit here, is the experience of maybe looking back or a little bit. I think it makes people think of a time when things were a little bit simpler, not as complex as they are today. I guess there's a certain amount of romance or good feelings that revolve around steam locomotives and this type of an operation. It's a great experience.
You guys gonna sit there?
Like, chill.
Welcome aboard America's Historic Steam Railroads. Visiting a railroad museum is always a fascinating experience, and our program today is no exception to that rule. Hello, I'm Bob Shriver. Let me introduce you to the Illinois Railway Museum. The museum is located about 60 miles northwest of the city of Chicago, in the small town of Union, Illinois, and it is operated by a large group of very dedicated volunteers. You'll find a fully operating railroad museum with numerous display barns containing some outstanding equipment, such as Midwestern interurbans and streetcars, private passenger cars, electric locomotives, vintage diesel locomotives, the fully operational 1936 Budd articulated stainless steel Burlington, Nebraska Zephyr, a great selection of rolling stock, and of course, the mighty steam locomotives. Our visit to the museum was during a special weekend event called Members Weekend, and we were very fortunate to see a large selection of equipment operating. So sit back, relax, and enjoy your trip on America's historic steam railroads.
One of the strengths of the Illinois Railway Museum is its members, and particularly its volunteers who come out and work on the project here at Union. We have on any given weekend probably somewhere between 35 to 50 volunteers out here who are actually working on equipment in the restoration of the equipment and that, or else in the operations of the museum.
Did Ed get that seal down tight?
This place has been likened to one of those Field of Dreams type things, you know, if they build it, they will come. Well, it seems that we started out small, and as we've kept growing and growing, we've kept adding more equipment, more pieces. People come and people go, but the constant seems to be that there's always people who are interested in equipment and the restoration of it and seeing it operate and that. And we do continue to attract volunteers here who will work on the project. As a volunteer organization, there isn't the consistency, say, that you would have with a paid staff. However, it seems that we are able to continue to grow because of the interest of the volunteers that come out here and work on the project and on the equipment. If somebody said to me that, you know, you're going to have this cornfield in McHenry County and there's going to be 300 pieces of railroad equipment in this cornfield, and it's all going to be, you know, there's going to be people coming to this cornfield to see this railroad equipment and that. If somebody told me that 35 years ago, I'd have told them they're nuts. What the public will see when they walk through here is for example, in Barn 3, that's where all the steam passenger coaches, or most of the steam passenger coaches that are stored inside are kept. Some restoration work goes on at Barn 3 by the coach department fellas. In Barn 4, that's an electric barn, and it's also the shop, where, the electric car shop, there where the restoration work primarily takes place for the electric cars.
The museum prides itself in returning trolley and passenger cars to their original condition using old photographs and modern materials.
In the rotation, as a person is walking through the place, we've arranged it in order, either barns or yards. When we build, they start out as yards, and then when we put a building over it, it gets changed to barns. But the number stays the same. So the next one on the walkway, as a person's walking through, would be Yard 5. Yard 5 primarily has diesel locomotives and some of the passenger cars. Barn 9, which is the, we call that the heavy equipment barn or the steam barn, but Barn 9 is where the Nebraska Zephyr train set is stored. It's a building that's almost 600 feet long, and of course the Nebraska Zephyr train set is an articulated train set, cannot be uncoupled, and so the train with its locomotive is all in one piece on one track right there in Barn 9. Next to Barn 9 is the steam shop, and that's the building where the steam locomotive restoration takes place. It's all mostly metalworking machinery. Among the metalworking machinery that we've gotten, it's all secondhand, and members have heard about it at different places, and we get them donated. But one of the prominent pieces there is the 92-inch driving wheel lathe that the museum acquired from the old GM&O shop in Island, Tennessee. It was called the Island Shop, and it's one of the largest driving wheel lathes in the country. For years it sat outside under a tarp. We had poured the foundation for it when we brought it in, and never had enough money to put a building over it. Now we've put the building over it, and we're getting ready to put this into operation.
About 10 years ago, we got a set of passenger cars that came in, and they were all in such bad condition. I more or less felt sorry for the equipment. I thought it would be nice if somebody did some actual restoration on these cars, so I more or less picked out a car that was in the best condition, and I started working on it.
1630 is a Baldwin locomotive built in 1918 with a 210 wheel placement. The locomotive was one of 400 that had been ordered by the country of Russia. 312 had been shipped when the United States stopped further shipments due to the Bolshevik Revolution. The locomotive was retired from the Frisco line in 1950 and was donated to the museum in 1965. After several years of restoration work, the locomotive was back in service at the museum in November 1972. Its weight is 105 tons, and it has 52-inch drivers.
The museum's steam collection is varies from the smallest to the largest. When I say the smallest, we have an 040 tank engine. Our largest locomotive is a 2882. It's a Y3 type locomotive from the Norfolk and Western. It's an articulated locomotive. We have several consolidation types, the 280s, and then the engine that we're restoring in the shop for operation is a Union Pacific consolidation. That's a 280 also. As you work up the wheel classes, we have a 284, a Berkshire type from the C&O. We have a 210, the Frisco Decapod. It's a Russian Decapod, and that's the one that we operate for the public. We have several Northerns, 484s. We go up from there, of course, to the 2882 from the N&W, and altogether we have 23 steam locomotives on the property, including one of them that's not on the property right now, a project that the volunteers are doing in Beaumont, Texas, moving a Southern Pacific 210-2. One of the things that I don't think is covered enough is the amount of work that goes into something like this, and the credit that should be given to the people that actually do it. The Illinois Railway Museum isn't distinctive in the country when it comes to that. There are many other railway museums in the United States where the members are really the unsung heroes, and they actually make it happen just like it happens here at the museum.
The museum's collection of trolleys include wooden as well as steel. Passengers are fascinated with the electric locomotive as it gets ready to pull the next train.
We're open April and May on Saturdays and Sundays, and the same in September and October, and then we're open daily from Memorial Day to Labor Day. During those days in the summer months when we are open on a daily basis, we operate electric cars, and then on the weekends when the most volunteers come out and that, we operate steam and diesels.
Your Meat and Johnson siding is the 1630 steam train.
415 and 1374, your locations, please.
Run the 4000s over.
Roger that, I'll be in contact.
course, our look at this gold mine of equipment would not be complete without the diesel locomotives. An interesting feature of the museum when steam locomotives operate are the cab tours between each run. The tours hold great fascination for young and old.
You can get a lot of pleasure out of watching the kids and older folks, you know, recalling and seeing what it used to be in my era.
The museum began in 1953 in a different location in North Chicago, Illinois, and started out with one car in the collection and moved to this location in 1964 in Union, Illinois. At the time that we moved to this location from the original one in North Chicago, we had 43 pieces of equipment that we moved here. And of course today we have over 300 pieces of equipment in the collection. The Illinois Railway Museum is really an enthusiast's dream, you might say, because it's a living history museum. Does the same thing here as many of short lines do, except on a larger scale. We actually duplicate here at the museum the tasks, the jobs, the things that it took to run a real railroad. And this is, of course, a real railroad here because we are the same, but same gauge. But we do here what was done back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s to make equipment operate safely on a railroad. And sometimes it involves a lot of heavy restoration work. Other times it just involves some of the more mundane tasks such as upgrading the brake systems or changing valves and the like, because the pieces have been maintained and are in good condition now.
As we start our trip, the engineer receives the train orders just like the old days. Here's a rare sight and a treat for all rail fans, a steam train thundering past a standing diesel train on a siding. All too quickly we reach the end of the line and now must go back to the depot for the next group of waiting passengers.
Watch your step hold on the railing.
One thing that I always enjoy doing once in a while to give myself a little bit of balance and to keep the spirits up and keep plugging at it is to go up to the station and just watch people getting on and off the trains and just watch the trains operate and the interactions between the younger generations and the older generations and to know that I had some small part in actually making sure that this equipment wasn't turned into fence posts and nails because it got scrapped. I think that that's one of the things that sometimes you lose sight of in volunteer organizations because you're so deep into your project that you screen out all of the other things that are really important when it really comes down to it. That's probably the thing that I get the most satisfaction out of.
These cars were all steel cars. Some of them were actually made into electric cars.
The thing that I find most gratifying here at the museum and that keeps you going is the knowledge that I had some small part in seeing something preserved for future generations. That all sounds, really great and all of that, but after being here for 35 years, I've actually seen it come to pass. That's something that I worked on or helped do 35 years ago or 25 years ago, or however long it was, is actually here, it's preserved. In some cases, it's actually running, and people, the public, the kids, the grandparents bringing the kids out to see it and all, they can actually get on this thing and ride it and experience what it used to be like back in those days to ride these historic vehicles.